Mark's father and grandfather were both Freemasons. At an early age, Mark learned Eastern Hindu meditation and experienced the addictive power of mysticism.
Around the age of 10 is when I first had my encounter with a spiritual being that had presented itself after I'd gone into a deep trance. I could pierce that veil and see these spiritual beings that I thought were dead ancestors who have passed on and now have received these bodies because they are now Mahatma. They're enlightened descended masters. Piercing the veil was like a drug unto itself because there were all these augmentations that come off of it, of the out-of-body experience, the ability to move objects, the ability to levitate. These are things that you are awed by, that you are actually outside of the known laws of the physical realm. And so you must be dealing in a spiritual sense. And so you believe you have these gifts, and each one of them requires that you're invoking some type of power which intrinsically you think it's yours. It goes back, thousands of years into the teaching of the Tao and into the understanding of the power of the yin-yang and the positive and the negative forces, that you can take hold of those things in your life. You can manage those things in your life as long as you let them be a part of your life. Catholicism was a foundation as an early child as well. We attended Mass, I attended catechism, but there was more of an idea that it was kind of a affront to the real spiritual nature of what you can tap into as you become God. My grandfather, years ago, who I never met because he died before I was born, was a member of what is called the White Lodge of Freemasonry. And understanding that compared to what we have here in North America, which are the Blue Lodges. In the Blue Lodge, it's just a portion of the spectrum of the White Lodge. So in the White Lodge, they were given full view of the things that were available to them. My grandfather's apron of wisdom, with the Masonic apron of wisdom, was presented to me to take if I had wanted it to join a lodge. The clasp of the apron was the serpent eating the tail. The idea that reincarnation takes place in the life of an adept. So you keep coming back until the point where you've reached a Mahatma level, and you don't have to then come back into a physical presence, but you can come back as an esoteric being.
And the candidate rises, reborn as a Master Mason.
It is to teach the Mason the importance of the immortality of the soul.
Mark rejected his grandfather's Masonic apron after becoming a Protestant Christian. He came to believe that Christianity was totally incompatible with secret societies. Through his early career, Mark's circle of associates included Freemasons in big business and government, some involved in drugs and sex trafficking. Though he was never an initiated Mason, Mark knew too much. Mark drove to his cabin in upstate New York for a holiday. Along the way, he processed the gravity of rejecting his grandfather's Masonic apron and the lifestyle and people attached to it.
Though I was making an extraordinary amount of money and sitting next to celebrities and being introduced to some very powerful people, there was an empty feeling inside that was not going to be filled by anything. And it wasn't until that I asked the Lord, if this is real, if there is something about you, I want to know about it.
He arrived after dark and noticed bright lights in the distance behind his cabin.
There were a lot of people that were standing on the back with hoods, white cloaks, and they were wearing Masonic aprons. I could see their faces because they weren't covered. People that I had met and known. I became a potential liability. And I cried out, praying to the Lord, what have I gotten myself into? And there was a small, still voice, and it said, Mark, take your shoes and socks off and go outside and tell them you belong to me. There were a full manifested demon in front of me, 14, 15 feet tall. I was looking up at it, and it was speaking to me telepathically, and it said, "Your soul is mine." And the one thing that uttered out of my mouth was, "You can have my body, but you can't have my soul. I've given it to the Lord."
The demon disappeared, and the men fell back into the night.
And it was a perfect peace that presided after that. And I woke up the next morning, I went into that town, and I went into that diner, and there were a couple individuals sitting right there in the diner that I had seen the night before. And they had asked me how I had slept that night. And I said, "I slept great."
Mark had heard the same voice that called to Moses from the burning bush, saying, "Take your sandals off your feet, for the place where you stand is holy ground." The God of the Bible overturned every other power that weekend, and Mark saw firsthand that true Christianity is not just another religion, and the Bible is not just another book sitting on a Masonic altar. Later, Mark received a sobering call from his father.
Don't get out from behind his shadow. And he meant the shadow of God Almighty. Because if you get out from behind his shadow, Mark, you're going to end up with a bullet in your head.